most concerning right now. And from a arrangement point of view, in terms of how fiqh is arranged, you normally get the shurut of something before you get the arkan, right? Because shartu shay, khariju shay, and ruknu shay, dakhil shay. I'll explain that. So the condition of something precedes the thing itself, right? A condition of something precedes the thing. For example, wudu is a shart for salat. Yes, wudu is a shart, a condition for the salat. So it's outside of the salat. Whereas if you are talking about recitation of the Quran is an obligation, is a farida in the salat. That's one of the rukn of salat. That's inside the salat. Right? So you get the things that are not concerned with the mahiyya, but concerned with external things to enable the thing itself to start, like tahara, like being in wudu. Sorry, I should translate tahara, like being in a state of wudu or facing the qibla, before you get a discussion about the actual thing, right? So that's why there's a discussion of how do you actually establish Ramadan. Before you fast, you have to establish that the new month has entered. Before you talk about what is the nature of fast, how do we fast, what breaks the fast, what maintains the fast. And these things are also referred to them as asbab, sabab. A sabab in Arabic is, another language as well of course, related to Arabic, is a cause. And when a certain cause happens, then an effect comes about. So cause and effect. In Arabic we call this sabab and musabbab. Sabab, musabbab. Cause and effect. Similarly here, so for example, a sabab for the Salatul Maghrib, the Maghrib prayer is the setting of the sun, that's a sabab. It's the shurut, which again, it's a condition in terms of awqat of the salah, the timings of the prayer, it's a condition, right? But it's a sabab in a sense that when the sun sets, then Maghrib begins. The sabab is the setting of the sun, the musabbab is the time for Maghrib. I'll mention one small point before we get into this particular discussion here. There is a distinction among theorists, usulis, about the difference between sabab and shart. We're not going to get into this now. It's quite a latif part, and it applies in certain cases and has an effect, right? But before that, I want to just mention one thing, hopefully it won't be too complicated, is that for the beginning of Ramadan, we know that the sighting of the hilal is the sabab to begin Ramadan, right? Is the sighting of the hilal. We're going to talk about those proofs and those evidences in just a moment, because that's the main topic. Now, something might be a sabab, but it might not be, and I'm going to use another Arabic term, it might not be a mi'yar. Now, what is a mi'yar and what is a sabab? So a sabab effectuates or causes something, or causes the effect, like we said, the setting of the sun for the Salat al-Maghrib. This is a sabab. However, it is not a mi'yar. Why? Because once you have prayed your farida of Maghrib, you pray sunnah, you can pray nafal, you can pray nazar, any other kind of nawafil within that time. Qada, right? But for the fast, that sabab then is not just a sabab, it's a mi'yar, because it encompasses the entire day. We define the day, what a day is for fasting. And within that time, you cannot do any other type of fast. So for Maghrib, you've done your farida and you're done. It's not like the whole time from the setting of the sun till Isha, it's entirely encompassed just for that salah. You've done your salah, it's finished. You can do other prayers, you can do the salah, you can do other things. But for the song, the entire day is encompassed, it's muhit on the fast of Ramadan, this Farida fast. And at that point, you cannot do any other ibadah. I hope that's not too complicated. That's just for some of the brothers who might be a little bit more advanced or have some of that basic grounding, in that the time for the fast during the day of Ramadan is entirely encompassed with the fast of Ramadan. This is why we refer to it as a mi'yar. It's entirely encompassed with it with that ibadah from the point of imsak, the subsab, to the point of maghrib. It's encompassed entirely with the fast of Ramadan. Okay, so let's turn to the book. So this is a fasl. It's a section. We mentioned already how the books are arranged. There's a kitab, and then you have fusul within a kitab. Sometimes you have abwab as well. This particular book has fusul. So you could have a kitab, a bab, and then a fasl. Here we have a fasl. فيما يثبت به الهلال, and then there's also وفي صوم الشك وغيره. So in that which establishes, so this fasl, this section, is about that which establishes, brings about the crescent moon, establishes the hilal, and also regarding the fast of doubt. They call Sawm Shak. We'll talk a bit about that, but not too much. So we skip some sections in order to make sure we get covered. What time is it? Is it 8 or 8? Okay. Inshallah, I've got a present. Some people said don't stick to the book so much and give us more of the presentation, because we need to get to the issue of basically how we begin the month of Ramadan in this particular year at the moment. And sometimes the book will obviously digress into discussions, but it's not a digression in terms of the book's concerned, but in terms of our topic. So يثبت رمضان برؤية هلاله. The month of Ramadan is established with the sighting of the moon, right? برؤية هلاله, with the sighting of the hilal of it. In other words, of Ramadan. بهلاله, بهلال Ramadan. At the opening, I recited a verse from the Quran. It says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ. So, O Prophet, they ask you about the ahilla. Ahilla, plural of hilal. What is a hilal? A hilal is the crescent moon. Hilal is the crescent moon. We're going to talk about that because that's very important to discuss here. What is the crescent? What is a hilal? So the hilal, then it's linked, it's what, and the reply, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the Prophet, so people are asking him, you get this refrain or the style of address in the Quran, O Prophet, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ, for example, they ask you about this, reply to them with this. So there's a question and answer format in the Quran, although they're asking the Prophet, ﷺ, it comes down as wahi, the question and the answer, both are part of the wahi. So the Prophet ﷺ is told to respond, قُلْ, you say, here, وَوَقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ وَالْحَجِّ. They are, the ahilla, their purpose is what? To establish the times of worship and for Hajj. So the hilal now we know is mansus, it's textually definitive, stipulated for determining the months, determining Hajj and the months which are connected to our ibadah. We know our daily ibadah, the 5 daily prayers, are connected to the shams, the solar system, right? Al-Nizam al-Shamsi, whereas the months are connected to the Qamari Nizam, the lunar system, right? So we have both the solar, and that's one of the beauties of Islam, how it connects to the sun and the moon. So, but our months are based on the lunar system. So this is absolutely categorical. This is the nas from the Quran. And when you have a nas from the Quran, an explicit nas like this, it means that this is the point at which any discussion must begin, and you cannot go outside of a discussion which is not based upon the hilal, because this is mansus. This is nas, means something textually, like scripturally, explicitly established. Cannot go outside the hilal. Right. And then it says here, that's what it says, established with the sighting, ru'ya. Ru'ya means sight. Ru'ya, hilal. So you have actually got the verses. So let's have Baqarah 189, right? And Baqarah 189. And then we have a number of ahadith which are going to point to the same thing, but more explicitly, right? So a famous tradition of the Prophet ﷺ is Sumu li ru'yatihi wa aftiru li ru'yatihi. Fast when you see the moon, wa aftiru li ru'yatihi, and end the fasting. It's not about the daily fast, end the month of fasting when you sight the moon. فَإِنْ غُبِيَ, there's different traditions. فَإِنْ غُمَّ عَلَيْكُمْ وَفَإِنْ غُبِيَ عَلَيْكُمْ. If there is dust, right, or if it's cloudy or any other reason, that there is a rain, right, there is a cloud, there is dust, for some reason there is an illa, we call it, right? There's an impediment in the sky which prevents you from seeing the moon, then what do? The instruction is clear. فَأَكْمِلُوا عِدَّةَ شَعْبَانَ ثَلَاثِينَ. There's different traditions with similar wording, right? Similar wording. So you complete 30 days. It's quite simple. Right. Are you okay seeing that? I'm going to come side. You okay? Sure. Straightforward process of how to establish the month of Ramadan. And let me just say this as well. There are other, this is Kitab al-Sawm, and there are other types of fasting as well. Right? For example, Qada, Nafal, and so on. But the fast for the Ramadan, the obligatory Ramadan, there are other obligatory fasts as well. They can be like Qada or like Nadar and so on. But this is mentioned in Kitab al-Sawm because this fasting, the fasting of Ramadan, is the one that's connected with the sighting of the Hilal. That's why there's a discussion of the Hilal. You understand the possible objection or question? Why is there a discussion of Hilal in Kitab al-Sawm when there are other types of fasts we might make throughout the year, like the Monday and the Thursday fast, right? Or the fast which we talked about last time of the white days, Ayyam Bid fasting. So why is the discussion of the Hilal? Because the obligatory fasts, which are mentioned in the Arkan al-Islam hadith, which we mentioned, right? About what are the Arkan al-Islam? About the Shahadatain, right? Aqam al-Salat, wa Ita'u Zakat, wa Sawm Ramadan, right? That Sawm Ramadan, the Farid is connected, this one particularly, to the Hilal. That's why there's a discussion of the Hilal, which is not connected to other types of fasting, which are mashru', which are legislated in Islam or from the Sunnah, but are not related to Ramadan. That's why you have this fasl of a discussion about the Hilal, and it's quite an important, lengthy discussion, of course, in this book of fasting. So, يَثْبُتُ رَمَضَانُ بِرُؤْيَةِ هِلَالِهِ أَوْ بِعَدِّ شَعْبَانَ 30 إِنَّ غُمَّ الْهِلَالِ. So, the hadith has basically been expressed here. So, there's two ways. One of them will only apply. It's not two ways, there's one way, but it's one or the other. One or the other. أو لأحد الأمرين. أو is used for either one or the other. So, either by citing the crescent, or, in other words, or by completing 30 days if in a Ghummal Hilal, if the Hilal cannot be seen because of a rain, because of it's cloudy, it's foggy, or any other thing, right? I'll just read this one line out and then we're going to skip because there's quite a long discussion of what Yawm al-Shak is, right? ويوم الشك وما يلي 29 من شعبان وقد استوى فيه طرف العلم والجهل بأن غم الهلال وكره فيه كل صوم إلا صوم نفل جزم به بلا ترديد بينه وبين صوم آخر. Okay. So what he says here is that, now what is the Sawm Shak? He's gone straight into this idea of a doubtful fast. So a doubtful fast is the one that's connected to the 29th of Sha'ban, right? 29th of Sha'ban. So you come to the end of the month, it's time to sight the moon. And now if you are in doubt as to whether Ramadan has begun or not, there is a shak, a doubt whether it's begun or not. So you're kind of between whether it's a fast or not, there is shak. On that day you are not allowed to fast. Because the month of Ramadan for the fasting has to begin not with doubt but with yaqeen. And if there is doubt, you are not allowed to fast. Even a nafal fast. There's a hadith of the Prophet do not fast in the month of لا تقدموا بيوم أو يومين. Do not precede the month of Ramadan with fasting with a day or 2 days. You are not allowed to do that because of the idea of getting into shak. Like, I might be doubtful, there's a disagreement, I'm just going to keep it. No, you cannot do this. The only person that is allowed to fast a day or 2 before the month of Ramadan, in other words, the end of Sha'ban, somebody who was already in the regular habit of doing nafl, and it says here, illa sawma naflin jazama bihi, and that you are absolutely certain in your niyyah that I'm doing a nafl fast here for my regular fasts of Sha'ban, but this is not a fast in which I'm thinking, I'm doing a nafl fast, but in case it's Ramadan, I'm doing a Ramadan fast. To establish Ramadan, you need absolute yaqeen. You need absolute yaqeen. Okay, we have just a little discussion here now about, I won't go into too much detail about the fast of Sheikh. What is the requirement then for the fast of Ramadan? So we're going to skip a small section of that and then get onto the of Sawm Sheikh, right? And get onto the discussion of Ru'yatul Hilal. So it says, وَمَنْ رَأَى هِلَالَ رَمَضَانَ أَوِ الْفِطْرِ وَحْدَهُ وَرُدَّ قَوْلُهُ لَازِمَهُ الصِّيَامِ. It's a bit of a technical issue, you might think what's going on. So if somebody sees the Hilal of Ramadan or of Al-Fitr, of Eid, which is to break end the fasts, by himself, but for some reason, whatever that was, his testimony was rejected by the Qadi. It didn't say the Qadi, it says Rudda, was rejected. It's going to be by the Qadi, by the authorities, right? Rudda qawluhu. Then what happens? If his Shahada was not qabul, then he will fast by himself. That's lazim. Because for him, he was certain. For that individual, if they are certain in themselves that they saw it, then they would do it even if the community is not fasting. Right? Because they have yaqeen for themselves, although for whatever reason that was, the Qadi did not accept that Shahada. It wasn't taken.
So may I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is it an obligation for all of us, for example, to keep an eye on the moon? To, for example, like, let's say cycle.
Yeah.
So
we'll take that now. Should we take that now? Because that is going to come up. Let's take that. Let's just start from the practice. So we can move on from that masala. There's some more details in that, whether he does or he doesn't, what happens then in that case, right? وَإِذَا كَانَ بِالسَّمَاءِ عِلَّةٌ مِنْ غَيْبٍ أَوْ غبار أو نحوه قبل خبر واحد عدل, right? أو مصدور في الصحيح. So this is the issue, that if the sky has got an impediment, some sort of block or some sort of issue that it can't be seen because of ghaib, name, or ghubar, so that is cloud, dust, fog, or nahwi, whatever that might be. In the Middle East, we know you can get dust storms a lot, right? And that affects the vision. Then, if none of that is then you can take the testimony of a person who is khabar wahid, a single report of one person, right? So if there is cloud or fog, one person sees it, right? That's sufficient. But if it's empty, the sky is completely clear, then why is it that only one person's seen it and the rest haven't seen it? So it might seem that the logic is the wrong way around, but it's because if the sky is clear, then why haven't many of the people seen it? It should have been seen by a large number of people. All right? And even if that person is masturul hal, meaning we're not even sure about his adab, right? It's not really known whether he's just or not, right? That will be taken. We'll take the issue now of the one that you mentioned in terms of okay. So the issue is now about, is it important for everybody to sight the moon? Right? Is it necessary for every individual to sight the moon on the 29th night? So that's the instruction. To sight the moon is fard kifaya. A fard kifaya is that it's an individual obligation. Fard kifaya is that it's an individual obligation. Communal obligation. It's an individual accident. Fard ayn is an individual obligation. Fard kifaya is a communal obligation. So what that means is, Certain ibadat in Islam are fard ayn, like salah, saum, that every individual in the community, every Muslim who meets the criteria we mentioned already, has to fast, has to do the salah. But let's take Salatul Janazah. Is it a farida on every single Muslim? No. As long as some people from the community, right, from the locality, do the Salatul Janazah, then the obligation is lifted from everybody else. However, if nobody does it, because it's a communal obligation for fire, if nobody does, then everybody will be sinful. If nobody prays the Salatul Janazah, then everybody is sinful. So a fard kifaya means that if some people do it, it is kafi, it is sufficient for the rest. Fard ayn meaning it's not sufficient for a few people can't pray and say, right, you pray for all of us now. It's an individual obligation of every single Muslim. That's the difference between fard ayn and fard kifaya. So it's fard kifaya. And if, for example, people start doing this, you know what's going to happen. Because going out to sight the moon, right, is, so the hilal and the fasting of Ramadan is predicated upon, conditioned upon the fact that people actually go outside the moon. If people stop going outside the moon, Ramadan will pass and you might not even know that's happened. You might realize 2-3 days later when the crescent is absolutely visible. So that's why on the 29th, it's an obligation on people from the community, some of them, to go inside. And unfortunately, this is a sunnah that's been abandoned in many places. And that's unfortunate. That this is a sunnah that people, is that kind of matruk. And we know the hadiths about reviving the sunnah. Yes?
Ask the question. From what I understand is that some people say they go by the South Indian side. So if it's a fard in the community, does fard in the community mean fard on all the Muslims in the world? Fard on the Muslims living in certain places?
Good question. And we're going to tackle this question in detail, thinking about time, and I think a lot of questions are going to come throughout this one. So is it fard on everybody in, like, okay, we established it's fard kifaya. Is it fard kifaya, do we mean like for the whole Muslim ummah? In terms of if some Muslims in one particular country, in Saudi Arabia, in Libya, Morocco, have done it, or whatever that might be, Indonesia, then no one else has to do it. This is connected to another question, possibly two questions actually. Right? One of them is, which we will talk about, is the sighting of one region sufficient for another region? Or is it incumbent on every region to do their own sighting? There is a difference of opinion on this. Well, let's take it, before we do that, let's answer the question in its kind of most raw form, which is that, let's say you don't have a report yet from another region. It's not come about. Are you going to wait for that other region and not even do any sighting? And we might be doing that in this country. Say, oh, I'm not going to even go out there. I'm just going to watch the TV and wait for Saudi to announce it, or wait for Morocco to announce it, when the sighting report has not yet even come through. And you're just dependent on that. That is something, in any case, that nobody should do. The issue is if the sighting report has already come through, what do I do in that sense? Like if it's nafi, if they haven't seen it, do I go out? If they have seen it, do I not go out? That's the question. Or let's say you don't even have information yet. You don't even have that information. Normally we get the Saudi one, usually by the way, because of the time zone difference and time of Maghrib. One thing that you have to bear in mind here is not even 100 years ago from now, possibly 50 years ago from now, how do we even know that another country has seen the moon when we didn't have forms of communication like telephones? And by the way, in the beginning, when telephones were first established, the ulama rejected a khabar that came from a telephone. It's not reliable, it could be an imitation. We don't know who the people are. Because there's an issue of what they call al-khabar al-Mustafa. It's one of, they call it the turuq mujiba. What are the different ways in which you can establish the month of Ramadan? We mentioned the principle here on the screen, as you can see. The principle. But then within that, there are some of the things like what the qadi announces it and then manages to get his information to another qadi in another region. Right? There are other ways of establishing the moon apart from the raw principle mentioned. mentioned in the hadith, which are valid in the Sharia. But for those, like one of them is if a group of people, usually they say about 9, come from another region and say they saw the moon in that place, right, in another city. Like nobody there has seen it. Or say, we're in Exeter, and you get, people coming over from it, and they made it here from Bristol or from Plymouth, and say, 9 of us can say that they've announced it. We're not talking about another country here. That's a different discussion. It's just about nobody there has seen it, but a group of them came and said, we saw it there. Right? From another region, and they've traveled to you, that can be accepted. But if you're talking about wide distances, 50, 60, 80, 100 years ago, you wouldn't know whether another region has seen it. So that's why this idea, this needs to be like kind of nipped in the bud, if you like. It's very important to clarify. And there's a huge misunderstanding about this, right? There is nowhere, absolutely nowhere in the Sharia that if the moon is seen in one particular country only, that's binding on viewers. Right? There is nowhere in the Sharia which says if this particular country only sights the moon, only that country we're going to make as a basis, this is incorrect. One of the things that Muslims do in this country when they can't see the moon because of the moon visibility curve, which I will show you in a second, because of the moon visibility curve, might not hit in the kind of northern hemisphere because the UK latitude, northern latitude of the UK is quite high. Sometimes we miss the moon curve. So they say if we can't see the moon and that happens consistently, right, we go to the closest Muslim country, which is Morocco. So some people have this view that the closest Muslim country, not based on the visibility curve or scientific information, but based on the fact that if there's a reliable process of moon sighting there, a system, then we can take the sightings from Morocco because it's reliably and we can authentically prove it from what we said, those turuq mujibat, those things that necessitate, those ways or means of necessitating Ramadan are fulfilled because they can get in touch with the awqaf there, they get a fax, and they know that there's a credible system of moon sighting, right? And if the time zone matches, it's the closest Muslim country to here, so you will see some people with that. We're going to go through some of these hadith and tackle that in more detail, right? So we have this one's more emphatic actually. لا تصوموا حتى تروا الهلال. Do not fast until you see the moon, right? So there's nafi here, and then you have ithbat, right? So you've got a negation, prohibition, you've got nahi and then ithbat, which makes it more stronger. So do not do this unless this, or until this. That makes it even stronger, right? وَلَا تُفْتِرُوا حَتَّى تَرَوُا الْهِلَالَ. And do not end Ramadan until you sight the hilal. And then فَإِنْ غُمَّ عَلَيْكُمْ فَصُومُوا ثَلَاثِينَ. Then complete the 30 days, right? Here's another one, right? وَلَا تَصُومُوا حَتَّى تَرَوُا الْهِلَالَ وَلَا تُفْتِرُوا حَتَّى تَرَوْهُ فَإِنْ غُمَّ عَلَيْكُمْ فَأَقْدِرُوا لَهُ. Right? And then if you cannot see it, then make an estimation. We'll try to come on to this estimation as well. What does this mean here? So this is what this is from a couple of years ago, right? Where you have a moon curve, which is like this. So here you can see, maybe I'll show you something else before we go to that. I know we've got some people with more science backgrounds than I have, right? In the room here. So how this moon visibility, now this is the idea about prediction and predictability of sighting the new months, right? Predictability. There are some criteria which allow scientists and astronomers to sight the moon, right? They say if this criteria is mentioned, scientific criteria, then the moon is visible. The first people to master this science were Muslims, by the way. I think this is something foreign to our own tradition. They're actually Muslim scholars, scientists that developed this, especially with an interest of the holy months like Ramadan or Hajj. So, this
أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
Decide to press on. So, certain criteria you get astronomical information which can help you determine whether it's possible to sight the moon. So we'll go through them quickly because we've got quite a lot to get through here, right? The moon age needs to be a minimum. I mean, the record is about just under 14 hours, right? So after birth, so there's a point which you call conjunction, where what they call the birth of the moon. The birth of the moon happens, right? This is not the only factor, but it's an easy factor. If you know that the birth of the moon is less than, between the birth of the moon, right, and then so you've got the trajectory of the moon, is less than 14 hours, you can discount it straight away. It usually takes about 24 hours from the point of birth to the point of visibility, right? So the birth of the moon is not the same as the visibility of the moon. So that's wiladatul qamar. We don't take that, right? Our calendar is not based on the birth of the moon, which you can determine by an easy mathematical calculation. It'll tell you exactly when the moon is born. No, it's about when the moon is visible. And that's a bit more complicated because some factors are involved. So a first rough indicator, just to tell, no moon has ever been sighted by any astronomer before 14 hours, right? I think that's like a world record ever. Very great. If somebody does 16 hours, it will make the news, right? A moon of 16 hours we'll see of birth, right? Usually 24 hours, right? And it says here by the time it's 24 hours. Under 24 hours is rare. Usually about 30 hours after birth. We can show you that, right? You need a lag time of 50 minutes or more between moonset and sunset. So that's after the sun sets. And the sky needs to be dark enough for you to see it, because if the sky is too bright, you can't actually see the crescent moon. Right? If the sky is too bright, you can't see. You need enough darkness on the horizon, on the matla, to be able to see that the moon is really visible. It's going to form a thin crescent. I'll talk about Hilal in a second. So this elongation of the angular separation as well between the sun and the moon needs to exceed 8 degrees. There needs to be enough separation. Why? Because what happens is, if the moon is within the rays of the sun's rays are too bright for the moon to be visible. The moon, by the way, we know, is always there. It's about the illumination. Right? Can it form that crescent? And you need an altitude which exceeds 5 degrees. That's how high it has to be above the horizon. If it's too low, you can't see it. Now, if this criteria is not met, it's not possible. It's impossible, in fact, to sight the moon. It's an impossible. It's mahal. We call this the mahak stage of the moon, meaning it's at the beginning or the end of the month where you cannot see it. Yeah.
Forgive me, is this modern criteria, or
It's developed by Islamic scholars. You find it, and you can get some articles on how Islamic, and then it's been continued to be developed using modern instruments. It's roughly the same.
okay?
There isn't much difference between, because this was based on many centuries, let's say, and scholars who contributed to this field of observation.
Okay.
So through observation, they find this, and through measurements, right? I mean, it's remarkable what Muslim scientists did, and this is something more we need to get out there to tackle things like Islamophobia or prejudice against Islam and Muslims, to talk about the scientific contributions of Muslims. Right? We shouldn't see this as something foreign or against our being. In fact, there were people among the Aslaf who would talk about these things as well, right? About calculations, about Islam. Ash-Shamsu wal-Qamaru bil-Husban. Our universe, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created it on a mathematical course, right? They are going to, so these things can be determined because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this universe in a perfect mathematical course. You know, the physical structure of the world is a mathematical wonder, right? Scientific wonder. What you get then is a mahal, right? In order for that crescent to be visible, you need this factor, these factors, and this is a kind of a guide. From that, then you get this data. You can see this data here. You say, "Oh, what is going on here?" Right? And this is just somebody like you can probably we've done a lot of this for your work. So here you can see. I'm not going to go into detail because you don't have the time, but if you're interested, I'll happy to do that later. Right? You've got all of the details about the. This is for just picked out Riyadh here and Makkah. They're two different ones. Sorry, I should have just shown you one. Let me see if I can blow it up. Let's just take this one here, right? So here you can see Mecca, for example, and you can get the data. And then from that data, I won't go into detail, you can see here you've got elongation, moon set, age of the moon, and so on, best time when it is to sight the moon, okay? You've got a criteria here, which is easily visible, visible under perfect conditions, may need optical aid to find the moon, because it's C. So you can see here, it's F, and then the following day it's A. What does F mean? Not visible below the Danjan limit. So Danjan was a scholar, French scholar, right? Who had certain criteria by which he mentioned that if this criteria is not met, then it's absolutely impossible. There's no chance of seeing any moon, right? So that was Danjan, it's the French astronomer. Okay, so you've got these different categories. So they will say easily visible, not visible below the Danjan. Now, if you've got a category F here, you can be pretty certain that even if someone claims to sight the moon or someone predicts that it's going to be seen on this day, you know you can discount that pretty easily. Because there's just absolutely no way, scientifically speaking, that something could be established, right, using that criteria. What they will then do, just to show you, is then those visibility maps that I showed you, they will extrapolate this data and they can make a graph from it. This is what the graph will look like, right, for the world. Right, a world graph. So this lighting now, this is for the previous Ramadan. In fact, this Ramadan looks exactly the same, subhanAllah. Very, very similar, the map, right? So you can see here, you've got A, easily visible here. Nobody lives there, so that's not an account, right? B, C, the very west coast in some parts of Central America, and in C. Now, C, as you can see, is difficult. We've had many instances where the data said it's C and the moon still wasn't seen. A, you're going to see it pretty much, right? It's easily visible. B, also we've had instances where it's not seen, by the way, even with B, right? C, you sometimes get a sight, you probably, it's difficult to get them to see. Once you get past D, then you're in territory where you're not going to see it, right? So with C, it says even if you may need an optical aid to find it. Very rare you're going to find it with your naked eye, probably using an optical aid, like a telescope. And the ulama accept optical aid and ala to sight them. Right? Just going to show you here something from Morocco when I mentioned about people who do take sightings from Morocco. Is because from Morocco we can actually get a fax like this stamped from the Awqaf, right, signed, which will tell you that they've gone out to sight you. So you can see here, right, the Ministry of Religious Affairs, this is a previous time, right, of Religious Endowments and Islamic Affairs did watch today, Friday 29th Sha'ban, corresponding to April 12, this is 2022, the crescent moon of Ramadan in the 278 points covering all of the territory of the Moroccan Kingdom, The sighting proved to be negative according to the rules of Sharia, therefore the first, they're going to complete 30 days, right? And these are those different regions of Morocco in where it is. And I've actually been visited Morocco, spoke to scholars there. I was very satisfied by their system. It has no political interference of any sort. I did ask them that. I said, no. The ulama make the decision based on the reportings. It goes to the qadi reports back to the majlis ulama. We make the decision. There is no interference, right? And we've seen that because it matches with the data. This is one of the things you can do. Are the sighting reports, like you're saying, people say they've seen it in country for some country, is it matching with the data? That'll give you a very good indicator of what's going on. Now, sometimes we get certain information like the moon's been sighted, let's say somewhere either in Saudi Arabia or in some other country. That's when you start getting difficulties. Like if there's a report of a sighting, whether it's there or whether it's anywhere else, but you have issues where, for example, I mean, you probably want to get something like this. I'm going to move to this year now, right? Let's move on because that's just a picture of the Maghrib. Yeah, okay, this is important to mention, right? We know that the sun rises from, right, the east and it sets in the west. With the moon, it's the opposite. It rises from the west, as you could see from these visibility curves where we've gone. So here, it rises from the west and sets in the east, right? Sets in the east. Here you can see if the moon is going to be seen anywhere in the Muslim world, it's going to start to be seen from this side, from the Maghrib, from Morocco, this area here, and then go across in terms of who can see the moon towards Saudi Arabia. If Egypt, for example, or Saudi Arabia claim that they've seen the moon, then it's necessary that Morocco or Algeria have seen the moon, because it rises from the west and it sets in the east. It's not possible for somebody further east, let's say Pakistan or India or Indonesia or whatever, to see the moon, but it's not been seen, provided there's clear skies, of course, in any of these regions. Because the moon doesn't jump, it doesn't do acrobatics and fly over certain countries and land in a certain place. So if some region has seen the moon, but no other region, even in the same country, let's say, has seen the moon, they've got clear skies, no country further west has, you know there's a problem. Yes.
But what about the time differences? Because
yes, this also matters. And that's if you are going to take a sight from another country. And by the way, just on your question, because we're trying to get that in now, just wait a little bit of time, is if you are going to take the sighting of another country, which a lot of ulama don't accept, by the way, some ulama do, right? It is with conditions, some of the madhabs do, that there shouldn't be a day-night difference. For example, you need to do your Taraweeh prayer here, okay, or at least minimum is imsak for Fajr. You can't be waiting all night for a report from another place if you haven't seen the news. Right? It's not practical and it's not acceptable to do something like this, right? So these are some fatwas what I'm presenting from different scholars. We probably got the time to do this, right? Which tells you that you cannot determine one country to say that if they cite the moon, it's either Ramadan, and if they don't cite it, it's not. So this is even including Saudi Arabia where there is Makkah and Medina, right? So this is a fatwa. This is to Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen, I think this one, possibly. Yes, it should be, right? So scholars of Saudi Arabia even, they say that this is not a dalil in Sharia. There's a dalil about saying who cites it first, but not to point or designate one country as like as a point of evidence and ignore everything else. That's not how it's based, right? And you can see there's also other. The reason I mention this is because some people in this country, they are adamant whether the moon can be seen or not. If there's an announcement from Saudi Arabia, that's all that matters, right? Yes.
Just a question. I know we're talking about Ramadan, but would this also apply for Yom Arafah?
Yes. How do we know it's Yom Arafah like 80 years ago? We didn't know. In fact, again, they got the same fatwas. Your Arafah is your Arafah. Everybody's Arafah is their own Arafah. It's not Arafah connected to when the Hujjaj are doing it. People didn't even know when they're doing it in Hajj. Right? So, yes.
Let's say quickly, spoke about a country. What if, say, for example, there is, like before the Umayyad Khalifa, and there was a big stretch. So maybe because it's one Muslim man and the one Muslim leader, would you say what applies for here also applies to thousands of miles away?
If you can get the report across, how are you going to get the report? If you can, under one Khilafah, like you say, or even under the Ottomans, let's say the Uthmanis, right? if you can get that across, so for the Hanafis especially, I was going to touch upon this. This is mu'tabar, as I say. Yes, it's valid to do such a thing, even if it's far away.
So then it's not for one country, it's for one region. So people in, say, Riyadh, could they allow moon sighting in the group?
So we have this tradition as well. We don't have, again, there's an ikhtilaf. So you have when the moon was seen in Damascus, in the time of Sayyidina Mu'adh, right? And when they took that report back to the Hijaz and to Medina, it was Ibn Abbas, he rejected it. He said, well, they've seen it, they can see it, but we're going to do it according to the new So somebody did get there by night, right? And said, we're not going to go with that, we're going to go by our own way. So there is a difference of opinion on this particular issue, right? But again, if the distance is too much so that it makes a day-night difference and it makes it completely impractical, that's also not going to be accepted. But for some people, it's the region, and then you're right. Then you are right. There's a point about how far can you extend that region? Right? What does the bilad mean, right? What does the bilad mean? But on the question of Arafah as well, the same scholars are adamant that if they believe in local sighting only, let's call it that, it has to be a local sighting, even for your Som Arafah, your fasting of the day of Arafah. It has to be that their Arafah is their Arafah, right? Every country has got their own bilad, right? They have their own Ramadan, their own Ramadan. That's what their position is on that particular one. But there's another debate though as well. So the people that do accept a sighting from somewhere else, call this ikhtilaf al-mataliq, the people that accept that will say that that has to be established correctly. Right? So have the means be correctly established. That's where you get into difficulty, right? So there's a YouTube here video, right? So we will leave this for now and move on to the moon sighting for this time, right? Okay. For tomorrow, we've got 10 minutes, let's cover this, right? I don't know whether you can see this. We know that the age of the moon in various places, Makkah, is 6 hours and 29 minutes. We can discount that straight away. And the Sharia and the ulama have said that in terms of discounting a sighting, right, you can discount a sighting easily based on these rules. We don't establish the months of this, but we can reject a sighting if it's something that is incredibly fantastical and completely ignores and goes against basic science, because that's not the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the earth. So if you've got a 6-hour moon, and you can see the altitude of 2 degrees, elongation of 4 degrees, sunset to moonset lag time is 13 minutes, that's not visible, it's below the
with respect to the criteria that you
with respect to the criteria. And that criteria is agreed upon by scientists pretty much, right? You can see here, I've not produced this by the way, someone else produced this somewhere in Leicester. But you can get it it's the same thing, but they just made it look a bit more nicer than the one that I had, right? South Africa, because it's got a similar time zone in terms of where we are on the map, right, in terms of longitude. South Africa, also not possible. Morocco, 9-hour moon, not possible. United Kingdom, not possible. This is the curve that they've extracted, right? So you extrapolate the curve from this. This mean visibility curve here, you can see, will show you that it's not possible to sight the moon anywhere in the world. It's a bit like the last one I showed you. SubhanAllah. Very, very similar. Yeah, it's very similar to 1443 Ramadan, right? Let's come back again. You can see that the only possibility here, this is a good practical example, is in the very west coast of America, or in the islands here like Hawaii. They've got a better chance because that'll be in the B. But if you want to take the United States of America, you've got San Francisco here, New Mexico, have got a chance at C. But it's a difficult one because it's C, it's not A, and it's not B. Right? So first of all, if you're not going to take a sighting from another place, you're going to reject that anyway. If you say we don't rely on the States. Let's say you're going to take a sighting from another place. The time zone difference between San Francisco, in case they do see, is 8 hours. By the time they report it, if they've got a system of moon sighting there, let's say a proper one, by the time they report it, you're going to get your news like 5 a.m. in the morning here. It's going to be too late anyway. So you'll just discount that, right? And you can see anywhere else in the world, it's not possible to be seen. The next day, you've got complete visibility. Some people say we should go for a global day of Ramadan, everybody should be united on one day. This is not a Sharia requirement, by the way, and a lot of ulama reject this idea, including the ones I mentioned, right? But some scholars, let's say they want this idea of unity. I mean, we're supposed to have unity in other things, by the way, not in our Salah time, or Dhuhr, Maghrib, Fajr, and Eid and Ramadan. Unity we're supposed to have in our hearts and minds in terms of, right? So here you can see, if you do want unity, then that's also next Tuesday. So this is the map for Sunday night. Here's the map for Monday night, which is absolutely clearly visible, right? Clearly visible. So any sighting that we might get tomorrow, we know that that sighting is incredible and cannot be established. So in that case, because we know that it can't be established, it's going to be not accepted by scholars because of its nature that it can't be seen. We've got a few minutes to take some questions before Salah. We've got 6 minutes. Any questions on what we've been discussing? I've got some solutions here as well, by the way, yeah? Just to finish to leave this on here, right? Yes?
Just on one of the points you mentioned about the conditions, you said that if an individual, his witnessing of the moon isn't accepted by the Qadi, he'll have to fast.
By himself.
Because
if he's certain in his own certainty, yeah.
How would that work with meaning fasting 29 or 30 days? Would he have to fast 30, and then if everyone else fasts?
So you mean like at the end?
Yeah.
Let's say
yeah.
okay. Let's say it's for yeah. So he would be muftid. In other words, he would break the fast, right? He, in that sense, then yeah, he would. If he's seen it and he's certain, then he wouldn't fast for the next day because he's certain that it's iftar for him only. Lazima lahu faqat, only on him. He should go around spreading it and trying to convert people to it when there's an authority in place.
What conditions need to be met for the Qadi to accept the sighting?
So there could, like we said, he needs to be an upright witness. He might be rejected because he's not himself upright. And they say that, his shahada, we're not going to accept it, but for him, he's sure that I've seen it. Could be something else like, there could be some other reasons and basis for doing it, like, other people were with him and the Qadi came to a decision. We had an instance, it was last year, where I think it was actually in Saudi Arabia, where one person said they saw it, and 20 of the people around him said there was no sighting there. Some of them actually went from the UK to see, we want to see whether they can actually see it because these things come out. And 20 of them, some Saudis and some British people said, we didn't see them. This individual said he saw it and said, no, there was clouds. For that individual. If he's certain in his head, this is part of his iman, right? Like between him and God, that is, if he's not doing it. But if he's certain and for some reason it's been rejected because of his adala, it's not being considered an upright person, right? Or for whatever the reason it's been rejected, then he should still fast by himself.
Then how would that, what Ahmed asked about 29, 30 days?
Then he would just do 29 days. For him only, because he's certain that, it's happened. Now, I've seen it.
Even if everyone else, let's say, does 30, if they don't start,
then he must by himself.
Then his
because he's not like every his a days can be different.
Wouldn't that be separated from the Jama'ah?
But only for him. He can't he cannot then publicly go and make a point of this. It's for him, that's it. That he's seen it, because the ibadah for him, the ta'yeen of this, the designation, the condition is about the sighting of the moon. So that condition has been fulfilled by him. If you look at the raw stipulation of the Quran and Sunnah, it's been fulfilled for him. But it's not fulfilled for the Jama'ah through the Qadi for whatever reason that might be. So, only on that particular individual. It's an interesting issue about the Jama'ah as well, because sometimes even here we have an issue about Jama'ah versus correct position. Right? What do we do in a situation tomorrow if there's an announcement made, but we are absolutely sure that it's not seen? What do you do in that particular situation? Right? They're saying some mosques are doing it. We're going to have this tomorrow. If there's an announcement tomorrow, we're going to have a split in the UK. And the reason for that split in the UK is because some will say we're following a certain country that have announced it, others will say no, it's impossible to be proven. Many of the countries around have not done it, have not cited it. Right? And they're not cited in their things that are not going to on that basis. So that's a judgment that you have to come to. The most important thing is to consider has the requirements of the Sharia been fulfilled? Yes or no? And that criteria is very clear. Right? If there's a clear sky, there should be many people that have seen. In the beginning, I might have said it the other way around if the sky is clear, right, one person sees it, right? If there is if there's cloud in the sky, one person is sufficient. But if the sky is clear, then why is only one person seeing it? Many people should have seen it, right? So if you've got a clear sky, one person is claiming to see it, that's a problem, right? Why? Why is only one person seeing it? We can take other answers.